that track, More Than a Woman, got to number 7 in 1978 for Tavares, a band made up of 5 brothers. And tonight we are so delighted to welcome one of them to the show, Tiny Tavares.
Hi, Jackie.
Whereabouts in the world are you at the moment?
Where in the world is Waldo, huh? I'm actually in New Bedford, Massachusetts at the moment.
And is that where you live, or you're on the road?
I was born here. And it's always so unique because every time we tour the UK, I get the feeling like I'm still at home because they named everything New Bedford, New York,
yeah,
New Britain. It's, all of the names come up with with cities that that you hail from.
I know you've got a few dates here in the UK over the summer, including the Soul Town Festival in September in Beckenham. So people can certainly check out how to get tickets online to see you live. But in the meantime, Tiny, let's take a deep dive into your backstory. So Tavares is obviously a family group. You've known each other all your lives. I know you're very proud of your Cape Verdean roots, but born and raised in Rhode Island. So how long has the band itself been together now?
Well, I would say some 5.5 decades now.
Wow, fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah, we started out as children. My father played behind us. We used to always perform at the Boys Clubs of America doing special events, fundraisers, and my dad would march us out and have us do our little tumbles first and get up on our positions at the microphone and start to singing.
What kind of songs were you singing back then?
Oh, back then, some of my favorites. We all had different favorites because we grew up in kind of different age groups and time periods.
Yeah.
But my brothers kind of, all favored the old doo-wop stuff. I guess we all favored whatever they listened to. We listened to whatever my father listened to. My dad was a musician, and my aunt, his younger sister Vicky, and we started out listening to traditional music, which was Cape Verdean music at the time. My father started getting into blues, rhythm and blues, and my aunt got into blues and jazz. And so we followed what they did, and then we went off and jumped out on our own into the music that we liked. I think the first song I ever bought was like Monkey Time, Major Lance, something like that.
Right.
Then from my era, because I'm the youngest of the family, so I kind of tailed in on everything else everyone else was doing. My brothers liked the Moonglows, the Drifters.
Your mama says that through the week you can't go out with me.
Number 2 in 1974, Kissing in the Back Row, the Drifters. So that's what your older siblings were listening to, Tiny. But what kind of music were you, as the youngest Tavares member, into back then?
Me as a youngster, I gravitated towards the Temptations, the Four Tops, Diana Ross and the Supremes, or when they were just the Supremes. And then, at Stevie Wonder, when he first came out, I was a young kid. He was a young kid. So, it was that kind of style of music. I listened to just about everything and everybody. My father brought us up on jazz. So I knew all about Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald and Count Basie and all of that. Like,
sounds like you had a very rich musical education because of him, and it also sounds a little bit not dissimilar to the Jackson family.
Yes, very, very very similar to the Jackson family because we actually toured with them quite a bit as well. As we were making strides for success, they had catapulted to success, and we were graced to be able to and blessed to open on shows with them. We opened for Lou Rawls, the list goes on and on and on. Marvin Gaye, the Supremes, Diana Ross. We opened for Al Green, the Four Tops, Temptations. On our last UK tour was on tour with the Four Tops and the Temptations. So
how fantastic!
Now, if you feel that you can't go on, because just look over your shoulder. I'll be there.
Number 1 in 1966, Reach Out, I'll Be There by the fabulous Four Tops, who a young Tiny Tavares started out as a fan of and ended up being tour mates with. I love those full circle moments. Plenty more where that came from as we continue our great conversation with our special guest, Tiny Tavares, next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where it's just you, me, and our special guest tonight, Tiny Tavares, beaming in from East Coast, USA for a great conversation and a meander through a treasure trove of incredible musical memories as part of Tavares, along with his brothers, for over 6 decades and still going strong. Before the break, we were talking about all the amazing acts that you've spent time with over the years, Tiny. When you sort of talk about all those phenomenal greats of music, and it's hard to put you on the spot and pick one, but when you were supporting them, obviously you'd be watching from the wings as a younger artist, an up-and-coming artist. Mm-hmm. Was there any particular artist that struck you because of the way they moved on the stage or the way they handled the audience? You know, you were obviously absorbing a lot of life lessons with these amazing people around you.
Well, yeah, mostly I would say for choreography back when I was a child, it was watching Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Temptations, because they moved around really good. And the Four Tops were kind of more of a laid back, but they still had choreography. Again, the groups from Motown and the Tamla. Everyone had choreography. It was like that was typical of R&B acts. Everyone danced. Everyone dressed, in very stylish, dressed alike. We gravitated to, while later on when I was watching other younger acts coming up, the Jacksons had great choreography.
The Jacksons, contemporaries of tonight's special guest on The Great Conversation, Tiny Tavares, along with his brothers. And Tiny, and was there anyone, Tiny, that you didn't get to work with that you would have loved to, like the one that got away?
The one that got away, let me think. I really don't think there's been one that's gotten away because we've worked with a lot of major acts. I would say if there was one that I liked most, was we used to love doing the shows with Lou Rawls.
Ah, yeah.
And so there's so many. And, the one that got away, I guess the ones that are current now are the ones that got away. Beyonce and those type artists.
I can see a Beyonce Tavares collab going.
So
couldn't
could
you?
I. Shall we put it out there and see if it comes back?
I think we should. I mean, her choreography is not too shabby.
Yeah. I think we'd lend a pretty good opening act to Beyonce.
You'll never find as long you're gonna miss my love.
You'll Never Find Another Love Like Me got to number 10 in the UK charts in 1976 for Lou Rawls, an artist that Tiny Tavares would have loved to have worked with. Though he's done pretty well, working alongside all the biggest names in the business across 6 decades of pretty much non-stop working in Tavares. I mean, Tiny, you've spent a lifetime being away from home base and touring. How do you feel about life on the road after all this time? It's obvious it's your job, it's your living. You've been doing it with your brothers for such a long time. Do you still enjoy going out on the road and meeting all these new audiences, every different generation coming along to see you?
Well, it's a double-edged blade, as they call it. It's bittersweet because I have to leave, my grandchildren, my children. My children are all adults now, but leaving their children and going out on the road isn't as much fun. But it is still fun meeting new audiences, especially when younger audiences will still gravitate to our shows, and because they grew up on the music their parents played for them.
Yeah, it's
really nice. It's really nice to run into those new supporters. It really feels great knowing that our music has superseded the the age of time.
How about over the years, especially when you sort of first started to become well known, became sort of famous with your music? Is that something that you know, it was a dream come true kind of thing, or was there a flip side to the fame and to the success that, you know, wasn't that easy to deal with?
Well, I guess, you know, again, the hardest part to deal with was always leaving family. But yeah, we were very, you know, very blessed to had been chosen out of thousands of acts, because when you look on it, you know, from a perspective of the averages, there aren't a lot of acts. You know, we run into acts all the time who we say, wow, you know, that act's great. They should have, you know, succeeded further than what they have. And it's just the luck of the draw, the luck of, you know, of the blessings that we receive from God. Because, you know, the things that happened in our lifetime, you know, a lot of acts never get to a Grammy. A lot of acts never get to perform in major arenas. You know, we've been blessed to perform in the O2. All of those major arenas, we've performed to, you know, humongous audiences in New York. We did a Brazilian festival. There was over 290 something thousand people in attendance.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Just for one show. We've done the shows out of Amsterdam and you know, 92,000 people in one evening and 96,000 people another evening. We did 3 nights and you know, those things were awe-inspiring. You know, it's that we can still be able to attend that kind of a performance. We did the Grammy Awards special for the Bee Gees.
Right.
Few years just before the pandemic, a few years back, and we got to work with Celine Dion and Maroon 5. And, you know, we've worked with Maroon 5 in different countries.
Oh, really? That's a great combo.
Yeah. So when you say, who have I not? It's kind of hard not to, you know, it's hard to get a gist as to who else, you know.
Don't think I can't feel like there's something wrong.
Celine Dion, Think Twice from 1994, just one of the many artists that Tavares have worked with during their incredible 60-year career. And we will be back with more great conversation and continue our meander through the musical memories of Tiny Tavares next. Welcome back to the evening show with Jackie Brambles. You're listening to our nightly great conversation where we invite one of our favourite artists of the 70s, 80s and 90s for a top-notch natter and a wander through the wonderful musical memories that have left their mark over the years. Tonight, we're delighted to have our special guest beaming in from New England on East Coast, USA, Tiny Tavares of the legendary family band Tavares. Just before the break, Tiny, I mean, you were talking about some phenomenal gigs that you have played in front of all these audiences. Is there one particular one that stands out in your mind? Not necessarily for being the best, that's too hard to kind of say, but memorable, whether for, you know, a weird reason, a good reason, you know, a not so good reason. Is there one that sort of stands out for you?
Well, the craziest one, I would have to say, and most dangerous was one we did in South America. I was just telling a friend of mine who asked me the other day, Paraguay, Uruguay, something like that. And they didn't have security.
Right.
And we worked in this arena that was like a dust bowl. When we left the stage, we're all, our uniforms and our bodies were all a different color because of the dust that got kicked up. People were being dragged up on the stage who had passed out. It was so frightening that it was like we had to run back to our dressing quarters. And that would probably be my worst on the list.
You're crazy.
My craziest.
Yeah. And who else was that one for you, or was that sort of a selection of different artists? Who else was there? I
think we were probably the only headliner that came in from the U.S. and it was all foreign acts, all acts from South America and stuff. And again, I guess the promoter just didn't plan on having that big of a crowd and didn't plan for enough security.
It's nice to be popular, I guess, but that sounds a little nuts. So how about your own favorite Tavares songs then, Tiny?
Well, first and foremost, Check It Out, because it was the first song we ever really got recognition with. The other two More Than a Woman in Heaven because of their popularity. And I'd have to say one more, though, and that would probably be Don't Take Away the Music.
Don't take away love with me.
Number 4 in the UK charts in 1976. That's Tavares. Incredibly memorable songs, Tiny. Who was writing the tracks for you?
Most of our songs were penned by other producers and writers. We've been blessed also in that area to have some really great writers. We've written a few here and there. My brother Butch had songs on a couple of the albums. Most of our stuff was always penned by someone else and arranged, and then we'd come in and do the recordings.
Did you ever have a situation either that you were offered a song and you passed on it, and then some other artist got it and it worked and they had a hit with it? Has that ever happened?
Actually, I don't think that ever happened in our careers. I watched it happen to a lot of other people, and I said, wow, I wish they had handed that one to us, But no, I think for the most part, everything passed our way that we liked, we recorded. I can't recall anything we really didn't like. Some things, just might not have been right for the timing of what we were going to do as far as an album. Sometimes we had a direction of what one of the albums was called New Directions. So, you'd look at doing stuff that was different and newer. But most cases, no, I think we pretty much took everything that was given to us and made it ours.
And equally, did you ever get a song that another artist had passed on and they were kicking themselves because you guys went off and had a hit with it?
Well, we did, but it kind of came back around for them. That was when we did She's Gone. Hall & Oates had recorded it. And then it didn't do much in the airways and on the charts. And a producer one of the producers brought it to us and said, this might be a great song for you guys. We did it. We brought it to #1 R&B, and the company at the time didn't hate to cast aspersions on any name, so I won't mention who it was. But they didn't cross over to the pop charts, and Hall & Oates got wind of it and said, hey, let's re-release it. And they did and got a hit. So we got...
You set them up and they knocked it out the park.
Exactly.
Everybody's high on consolation.
Before I let you go, one final question that we ask everybody, Tiny, and that is not a favourite song. That's an impossible question to answer, but a particular song by another artist that you found yourself going back to again and again over the years, either because it kind of jazzes you up, inspires you, or it comforts you if you're feeling low, or it calms you down.
Well, it would be probably Luther Vandross. I'm a fan of Luther Vandross. When I was performing solo, I do a lot of his music. So I would say anything from Luther Vandross would have been easy for my answer. But my favorite, probably that I always end up going back to if I perform special events sometimes and do fundraisers, and it would be All My Love.
Never Too Much, a hit in 1989 for Luther Vandross, chosen by one of his biggest fans, our special guest tonight, Tiny Tavares. Tiny, what a pleasure it's been spending this time with you.
You're welcome, dear.
All the best, and we look forward to seeing you on this side of the Atlantic later on this year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Tiny.
Cheers.
Tiny Tavares, what a legend.